Good morning. I am very privileged to announce the opening of our first official panel here today on health and wellness. We are going to be tackling a really important issue, that good old question of how us women can have it all, or if indeed we need to have it all in order to achieve the highest pinnacles of our success. Today we are going to look at how we can achieve financial and career success while still maintaining our physical, mental, and indeed spiritual well-being. And we really want to challenge the myth that success comes at the expense of other areas of our lives. So we're going to be talking balance, health, and of course, just being strong in a world that really at the moment seems to be asking women to take up less space. So without further ado, let me invite my esteemed panelists to join me on stage. I will now join you to start our discussion. We have so much to discuss you are most welcome to sit anyway. We have so much to discuss and not very much time to get into it. I also want to encourage everyone in the audience as we talk. We'll first start off with a few pre-scripted conversations with the ladies on the stage, but you're also most welcome and indeed encouraged to open your Slido apps and get your questions in. We will take as many questions as we can before we head off into the short comfort break after the session. So if you have anything to ask the panelists, please ask it. We will get through as many of your questions as possible. So I'm going to start with the world of mental wellness with Dr. Mpumelelo. Can you tell us, when it comes to mental health, and women in particular, here there is an issue in that we juggle career and family responsibilities. We juggle also, and particularly in the South African context, we juggle a double load of care, both the physical care of the people that we love and look after. Often multiple generations are looking to us for care and comfort, but also, again, increasingly in a South African context, but also increasingly globally too, women are the primary breadwinners. We carry that financial care load too. And again, as I said, for multiple generations. Now that is a lot of pressure. In your expert opinion, how does this not so hidden cost of care, the financial, the physical, and the emotional, impact on women's mental load and how we are expected to cope in the workplace?
Thank you, Bonnie. I just want to... Such an honor to turn 52 with all of you.
Happy birthday!
And I must say, just being here with all of you women, I would not have it any other way. So just the balance between being here and being with my family at this time. Thank you very much. So Bronwyn, what you mentioned is extremely important. So when we look at women's mental health, something that is often overlooked, in fact we call it something invisible, but very, very important is what we as psychologists would refer as mental load and the caring of others throughout one's life. And when I say throughout one's life as women, women do not start taking care of others just as adults. This begins a lot earlier. But what women are not taught, or most women are not taught early on in life, is really how to take accountability for our mental health. And at the end of the day, and I will keep harping on this throughout our conversation, is that no matter what society says or what the expectations are, what we need to learn and what we need to teach our girls is that our mental health is our responsibility and we've got to take accountability for it. The costs are extremely high, and what we need to then ask ourselves, again coming back to the sense of responsibility and accountability, is what is it as women do we get out of these multiple roles? Because our systems are extremely resourceful. And when I say resourceful in our systems, I mean exactly that. Whether it is our children, our partners, our colleagues, our subordinates, and our peers. That whole system is extremely resourceful. And somehow, as women, there seems to be an expectation, but not just an expectation, but also on ourselves. There must be some benefit that we are getting out of not taking care of our mental health. So as far as we are concerned, it's about what do I do to take accountability for my mental health? And she mentioned earlier on about multiple generations. We take the role of a sandwich generation, meaning that often we're not just looking after the younger generation, we're also looking after the older generation. So that doesn't leave much for us as individuals to look after ourselves. What we're then saying is we've got to move away from superwoman to sustainable leadership. And in order to have sustainable leadership, we've got to have sustainable performance, we've got to have boundaries, we've got to have balance, and most importantly, we've got to have time for reflection and for recovery. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are very wise words. Dr. Namonde, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now to just really pick up where we've started off, and that is that your work really looks about health in the workplace. And maybe you can connect a few dots for us here around what a healthy workplace needs to look like, and particularly around the needs of women, which are distinct from the needs of men. So if you want to speak to that around how workplaces can be more healthy from a mental wellness or a physical wellness point of view, we'd be very grateful to hear your expertise.
Thank you so much. Am I audible? Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, congratulations to Jewel for their 10th anniversary. I was telling Dr. Presh, I feel like the auntie of Jewel, because I started with them with the very first one at Hilton Hotel when she was launching the Little Black Precious book. So we've come a long way. Well done, my dearest. Just coming back to the topic itself, the workplace is a very unique place for men and women. We spend a minimum of 40 hours at work. So we cannot ignore health at the workplace. We've come a long way in terms of since the labor laws were promulgated around 1992, 1993, 1994. So we just happen to be stewards or those implementers of workplace programs, mainly because most employers are expected to comply to a few laws, including the Occupational Health and Safety Act and all other labor laws. Now, our basic conditions of employment, for instance, regulates our working time, our sick time, our leave, and all that. But equally, if somebody is not performing and a decision must be taken around termination, our Labor Relations Act comes in Section 8, specifically talks to those kind of issues. So we are blending the law and human rights, making sure that the workplace does not discriminate and doesn't unfairly treat other people in a different way. And our programs are mostly about advocating the rights of the workers. So basically, I am that voice that advocates for your rights, that makes sure that our employment equity forums are fair to everybody, our diversity, equity, and employment programs are fair, and we are represented. Because in the workplace, typically, people are sometimes at the lower strata and at the higher parts of the organization, be it the C-suite level. Sometimes women are not necessarily, represented. But we've changed. I must also appreciate change. I've seen change myself. When we started, everybody was sort of low level, middle level. Now we are represented at board level, at senior management. So we've really come a long way. And I think thanks to some of the work that me and some of the colleagues are doing in the workplace, that we've come where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Dr. Malapule, I'm going to bring you in here because I think it's a natural continuation of the conversation here. We have this issue now around there's new rights that need to be carved out for workers, particularly female workers in the workplace. And here specifically, I'm talking about the increase in consciousness and conversation around the formerly taboo topic of menopause administration in the workplace. So we're seeing a lot of rights groups now advocating. I think Spain now has menstruation leave, for example. Menopause conversations as having to work around the biological reality of women in careers, which is fundamentally different from men. So, Dr. Malapule, my question to you is, what are some of the unique health and hormonal challenges women will face if we are lucky enough to age? And secondly, what realities do companies need to start taking consciousness of when it comes to accommodations, when it comes to realities, and also on the more positive side? So I know I'm throwing quite a lot at you, answer whatever you feel best. What are some of the benefits that come out of this? Because so often femininity and womanhood is spoken about as though it's a handicap, although it's a cost on companies and on societies, as though it's a burden. How can we start to change that conversation? And again, I know I'm putting a lot at you. We can always, of course, get some of our other guests to come in here too.
Is my sound on?
Yes, your sound's
Okay.
on.
Thank you so much for having me on the panel, for having a gynecologist on the panel, and a gynecologist who is quite passionate about the care of women as they age, menopause in particular, and perimenopause. Over the years, even the women in reproductive years, it used to be quite a taboo and held back not to talk about menstruation, but that actually has taken quite leaps and bounds in being normalized and talked about very openly. But what is quite still unacceptably and very sadly lagging behind is the openness and normalization and acknowledgement of what the hormonal changes of the aging woman. As women transition from their reproductive years, where they used to be fertile, ovulating, pregnancy, hormonal changes start happening significantly from the 40s. And a lot of people are more familiar with problems being experienced by women once they reach menopause. Menopause meaning that a woman has reached the end of her fertile life, she stopped menstruating, and her ovaries are no longer producing the high levels of estrogen hormone, which is the queen of that rules over women's well-being. A very neglected segment and poorly understood, but can be quite understood, it's not that complicated, is that transition. When women and there's more and more women in the workforce that are falling into this transition and are struggling, but because it's not normalized and it's not widely spoken about, they suffer in silence, they suffer in their own corners. But let's acknowledge that woman or those women that are suffering silently in their own corners, it's actually costing the company. It's actually costing the businesses. So business leaders, entrepreneurs that are running quite substantial businesses that have a lot of women, it's actually in their business, the corporation's best interest to publicize and acknowledge and make it a common conversation and put it. I'm aware that business companies have wellness assessments for executives, and they just need to just put a step up and highlight and just show that it's the element of perimenopause and menopause is quite important, because it's not just for those women. It's actually of benefit to the company, because what will happen when those women don't get optimal care, and because there is care, we can help. There's a lot to help women navigate and improve. It impacts their performance, but also, if they're not taken care of, a lot of women end up withdrawing and leaving their positions and workforce much sooner than they would have if they get the right care. So it's in the benefit of the companies, actually, and the businesses to make sure that the right information goes out there, attention, highlight, because there is help available.
Thank you so much. Ria, oh yes, a round of applause is great. And actually, before we continue, please remember to put your questions in, and if you can, note which panelist you would like to address your question to. We'll get to them all at the end. But let's move on to Ria at this point in time. And I think we don't want to be afraid of diving into the taboo topics. Yeah, we've already spoken about menopause, the big M, but there's this other point that I really wanted to get your view on, and that is a lot of the subtext we have here is about women's relationships with our bodies and how much scrutiny that is under, and how much bad advice we get, and how many stereotypes we wittingly or unwittingly end up conforming to based on the world around us. The ugly economic reality, and I'm an economist, is that your weight is negatively correlated with your income. The thinner you are, the more you earn. And that's a very hard incentive to play around. This is the messaging we get. We can see, of course, we've got GPL-1 drugs coming into the market at the moment. All these messages saying to us women, we need to change ourselves to conform to reality, or to the reality of the economy, which is, of course, made up of incentives that we can and should challenge. So my question to you is, given this environment, the reality, and I always say it's good to understand what's going on so that we can face it head on, how do you, in your work, encourage women to develop healthy eating habits that can focus on keeping us strong enough to balance all these different commitments we've spoken about today?
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and what an honor it is to be part of the panel with such great minds. When it comes to women and weight, I think that is the one area we struggle a lot with.
Yeah.
Because once you hit a certain age, the weight just keeps piling up. And the more it piles up, the less confident we become. We become less confident in different areas, our workspaces, our home environments, and everything. And that is why we jump onto every dieting fad that you can find, because it is a struggle. But I always say, especially when I'm talking about weight loss and things like that, weight on its own is a very sensitive topic. You go to a family event, you haven't seen this person in 5 years. Instead of saying, okay, how you doing, and things, who unonne gore? How batung? And these are things, you will forget everything else that happened at that event, and the one thing that will stick in your mind is that comment. You go back home, the first thing that you do, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you're like, okay, maybe I can muscle, maybe it becomes better, maybe. So that is what will drive you, that even on a day-to-day basis, even when you have to speak in the workplaces, the confidence is a bit less, because you just feel like, I'm just not the version of myself I want to be. And I always advise to women, when it comes to health, be the best version of your own self. You need to set your own goals. Forget about everybody else and what everybody else is saying. And I think that's the other thing, is that social media is also not helping us. It's BBLs left, right, center, everywhere. And women are feeling pressured to look a certain way. Guys, remember, genetically, we are born with genes where you won't have a curvy ass or whatever it is. And it's okay. Embrace who you are. Love who you are. Take care of yourself. When it comes to healthy eating, it's not about where you buy your food. That's another thing. There are these daily vlogs of people search shopping in a certain shop because you think if you buy food from there, you are automatically healthy. No. They can buy food from that store and still prepare it in the most unhealthy way. It's about taking what you have and preparing it in a healthy way. Always remember that food is medicine. Food is meant to heal you and nourish you. Always remember that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Fighting words, and we'll get back to that in just a second. But of course, I have to bring Custer in, because Custer, of course, you're no stranger to scrutiny when it comes to not just yourself, but also your body. And as an athlete and author, you're a role model. But at the same time, you've also faced this pressure of a world that expects women to show up in a certain way. And I wanted to know, from your perspective, what strategies have helped you to stay focused on your goals and block out all the noise and messages, often very unhealthy messages around you, to focus on developing a healthy relationship with your body around health, fitness, and body positivity?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm a disruptor. But look, they spoke more about being responsible, being accountable. I mean, in the world of sports that we're in, it's systematic, and adversity becomes a problem, to each and every, particularly, women, I would say, in the global south. But with me, I think it's one, those things that you gotta have to love yourself, to gain, that confidence, because self-love, it's very, very, very important, as a human. But it comes also with investing in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, you become, the boss, of your own body, because the body connects, with your mind, your soul, and everything that you do. I'm an athlete, my legs, do the talking. And, I allow people to judge, I allow people to criticize. But we always say, silence is loud. When someone is quiet, they're observing. So I think that's what, helped me, to be successful in everything that I do, because I had to do, self-introspection. I had to look at my physique. I had to look at, how I walk. I had to look at how, I speak. And I'm like, yeah, I'm different. It's nice, But you see that it gives you a moral boost, because mentally you become strong, because you'll be like, it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be worried. But it's not okay to try to conform, to the society on how they think you should look like, how you should dress. You spoke about, the BBL, those things. Those are the things that destroys you as a human. But for me, what helped me focus, I had to focus on myself, not on my siblings. I knew growing up I'm different. I knew I'm not going through menstruation, but I didn't question. I said, it's nice that I'm not going through it. Because it gives me a room, to do a lot of things. But then I realized later on, I had to sit, with my sister and say, what's going on? Why am I different? Why am I not going through that? And they gave me the platform. They explained, everything. Then I understood to say, look, I'm a different woman. I should love myself. I shouldn't compare myself with anyone. And now, then, you are in a world where now there are rules and regulations. And for you as an individual, for you to be successful, you gotta have to have an understanding. You have to educate yourself, say, how do I carry myself throughout these difficulties? It still goes back to yourself. Control yourself. Have self-control. Manage yourself. Manage your surroundings. Make sure that you gather yourselves around people who build you than destroying you. So for me, I would say, for me to be where I am today is because I had a decision to make to choose who I roll with, But first, I put myself first. So I think it's more for putting yourself first, having a self-love, appreciating yourself, That self-investment, it becomes bold because it becomes a long term. Now I'm here, I'm talking to you. But then I was a very shy, teenager that was destroyed. I was in the dark. But I had to learn to be silent, observe, distance myself from my social media. You wake up every day, you're on the tabloids. They're talking about you, how you look, how you should look. And then it comes, publications where they try to make you look, more feminine. You're bold, you understand? But what I can say is more to everyone that is here. Love yourself and be comfortable with what you see. And when you look at that mirror, love what you see.
Amen. Amen.
Dr. Mpumelelo, I'm going to bring you back as the psychologist in the room and the birthday girl for today. Listening to what your fellow panelists have said, both their advice and their comments, what are your thoughts, firstly, on what your fellow panelists have said, but then also I want to make sure this conversation is practical, so our audience has some tips to take away.
Yeah.
And in that regard, what are some of the ways that you would advise as a professional that women can learn to protect their mental health and develop that executive resilience and balance that is so crucial in this complicated world?
Thank you, Bronwyn. And what I am hearing from the panelists is it's about you. And again, I'm hearing exactly what we said earlier on. It's about taking accountability. And I think on my right here, it was about your reproductive health. And again, it comes back to what information do I have? and what accountability and what responsibility do I take for my own physical health, as well as the nutrition. I love your joke about the BBL. We're not all built that way. But again, it's about getting the information, taking accountability and responsibility. I mentioned earlier on that we have to move away from trying to get everything right and done for everybody. And I said it's about moving from superwoman, basically being seen as somebody who does absolutely everything well all the time for everybody. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves, is that sometimes it feels good to do everything for everybody all the time. But it comes at a cost. Nothing should come at self-sacrifice. We are seeing women with burnout, and burnout is not something that happens overnight. It takes time. By the time we see women that are burnt out, in fact, we have an ICD-10 code for burnout, meaning that it is a serious situation. By the time we see women with burnout, they've been through months of constant stress and unbearable stress. And nobody's looking, nobody's seeing, nobody's acknowledging. And nobody's going to acknowledge except us. So resilience is not about carrying more. It's about carrying more wisely and carrying with others. Remember, I mentioned that everybody in our system is resourceful. Our children are resourceful. They can do more. Our partners are resourceful. They can do more. But in any system, when you've got a role that takes on more, of course the rest of the roles are going to relax a little bit. Because you know what? She's got it. So again, in terms of responsibility, our take is make sure that you take that accountability. And how do we do that? We make sure that we've got two lists, two personal lists. You've got a pleasant list, and you've got a mastery list. Humans, not just women, we all need something that we are going to work towards, something that we're trying to cognitively, intellectually, physically master. So every year you've got to make sure that you've got a mastery list. What is it that I want to grow in? It could be a skill. I've got clients that are doing amazing things that seem simple. Somebody will say, I'm going to take up a skill in music. I've got multiple individuals that are doing swimming lessons. I don't know what it is about swimming these days, but you know, it's either learning how to swim or improving their swimming, their skill there, a musical instrument, financial acumen. Your brain needs that. Physically and intellectually, we need that. We need a mastery list. And please don't have a 10, 20 things on that mastery list, because we're never going to get to it. And then the pleasant list. The pleasant list, you've got to, again, it ties back to accountability. I've got to know myself. I'm 52 yesterday, and I haven't stopped saying that. By now, I know who I am. I know what makes me tick. I know what makes me happy. I know what heals me. Have those things on that pleasant list that give you that. For me, daily I'll have something like a pause moment. That's on my pleasant list. I must do it. When I take the kids out to school, etc., I stop. Wherever I stop, I'll take a moment to reflect and to pause. It could be 10, 20, 30 minutes if I have it, if I can find it. And I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there thinking, but who's got that time? You make the time. Because as I said, nobody's going to be responsible for your mental health but you. A second thing on my pleasant list would be going out. And this will, I suppose, talk to the people that are more extroverted. But being out, I know myself. I know that I've got to be around people. So being here is so important for my own mental health. Every day, I make sure that I go somewhere because I am about connection, I'm about people, and about engagement. Somebody else who's more introverted may not be there, so they know that they've got to take some time out away from people. They've got to have that 10 minutes a day where they read a book or they close a door. So we've got to have our pleasant list, we've got to have our mastery list, and other lists that are just for us. I would keep it to 2 lists for now. So we're looking at boundaries, saying no. Ask yourself, is this for me? Is this for me to carry? Or is the expectation by default that it'll be me? There should be nothing that's by default because there are other people in your system that are very resourceful. The minute you do things, multiple things, and you're the only one carrying, it means that other people, their brains will literally shut down in those areas because they know that she's got it. Boundaries, so saying no. Making time for recovery to avoid that burnout. Time for reflection. Your list of pleasant lists and your mastery list. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. I hope you were taking notes so you can rewatch the video afterwards. That's valuable advice. Before we switch over to our audience questions, Ria, I wanted to ask you a similar question, and that is that you articulate a lot of the challenges that we have very beautifully, but I also know you've got some tips and hacks as to how women can actually approach eating healthily. I've seen your Instagram, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
So in a couple of minutes, I know everybody is different and everybody's eating challenges and nutritional needs are slightly different, but in general, what are your top tips for women that need more energy and a more healthy relationship with their food? And go.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. Really important. I think we tend to overcomplicate healthy eating. We think that in order to eat healthy, you need to be eating foods that you're unfamiliar with, that you can't even pronounce, asparagus, whatever, throw that out. What you don't know, forget about it. Eat foods that you are familiar with, that you can afford. Don't feel pressurized to be eating certain foods. Traditional foods, don't neglect them. I think also as Black people, we also need to go back to our roots. If our grandmothers lived for so long and could walk for kilometers without any health challenges, we should also ask ourselves, what was their secret? The secret is that they kept it quite simple. So keep it simple, keep it fresh. Another thing, I always say, when you open a packet of anything, it's already processed. That the more processed something is, the unhealthier it becomes. So when it comes to eating, the fresher, the better. There's food groups. We have our carbs. I know carbs are always the enemy. Guys, we need carbohydrates. For energy, you need carbs. That carbs equals petrol. I always say to my players, because you need to simplify it with footballers. So I always say to my players, carbohydrates equals petrol. If you don't eat carbs, you will not have the petrol that is required to run there on that field for 90 minutes. It is the only thing is the type of carbs. So because the white carbs, the refined carbs are bad, we've all generalized that all carbs are bad. But no, they are the whole grains, and that's where we also get the fiber from. So really important. Then the protein. When it comes to meat, the leaner, the better. The less fat on it, the better. And how you cook it is also important. This thing of cooking, gadi, spicy, then utori noroxy, then you say, that is too much. Because now you can't even keep up with the salt that you're putting in. And remember, salt is also one of the biggest causes of hypertension in our country. So we need to be very careful of that. Then we have the dairy food group. As women, it's also very important for our bone health. The key is to consume more of the low-fat and the fat-free. Because once you're over the age of 1 year, you don't need that extra fat. The double creams are just marketing. You don't need the double cream yogurts because down the line, you'll have a cholesterol problem. Animal fat, what your body can't use, it gets stored. And the more fat that you consume, especially the animal fat, it turns into cholesterol. So dairies, keep it to your low-fat, your fat-frees. Fruit and vegetable, highly important, very important. I always say in the black culture especially, we tend to only eat veggies, got Sundays, got several colors. But we need to change that and reteach the culture to say every day there should be a vegetable, a fruit. It's five servings of fruit and veggies a day. Remember that fruits and veggies are not just only the vitamins and the minerals, but they also give us the fiber. They also help to protect us immune-wise and things like that. So it's very important to ensure that you also include those in your diet. And then we have the healthy fats. Healthy fats, I'm talking, I think, about things like your nuts, your peanut butter, your avocados, etc. So those are important. Water. When you are thirsty, reach for water. Don't reach for a cup of coffee. That will just dehydrate you even more. When you are thirsty, drink water. And those are just some of the keys to just simple, healthy eating. Keep it simple. When you take like a packet of something and you read at the back and you can't even pronounce some of the ingredients, just know it's game over. If something can sit on a shelf for over 6 months, you must ask yourself, well, what is in this thing? Fresh produce has a short shelf life. The longer you can store something. So those are important things because right now we have high rates of obesity. We have high rates of high blood pressure. We're getting younger and younger patients getting high blood pressure, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks, which is sad to see. Cancers on the rise. The fresher, the better. Keep it clean, keep it healthy. When you are eating something, ask yourself, how is this going to benefit my body? What I'm putting in. Food is medicine. Just remember that. Food is medicine. If you don't take care of yourself now and ensure that you eat healthy, you will be forced to eat healthy when you are diagnosed with high blood pressure and diabetes. Right now, you are in control. For those who don't have the conditions yet, you are in control. You can prevent it from happening. But if you don't take control, you will be forced when there's now a diagnosis, and now you need to be eating a certain way. Look after yourself, women. I know there's a lot of things that we do, but your health should come first. A sick person can't look after people. A sick person can't chase dreams. So look after yourself on a daily basis. Do something for yourself that you're like, yes, I'm looking after myself.
You heard it. Okay, I have a question for the organizers. Can we see some of those audience questions, or should we continue here? I did also want to put Kasta on the spot for one very short comment while we're loading the questions, and that is, if you could sum up in 1 to 2 sentences your most important advice for the next generation of women who are seeking to achieve their full potential, what would you tell them?
Very simple. Obviously, you have to be accountable, but obviously know yourself, know your direction, know your vision, and know where you want to end up. That's very simple because then it's clear, but also be very clear, on what you want in life. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is a question for either, maybe you both want to make a comment, for Dr. Malapule or Dr. Namonde. We have a question around how organizations can better support new mothers, the people carrying the next generation of women forward. Especially when you've got to go back to work carrying that weight of, as we discussed earlier, the weight of care that goes along with it, and of course now you're looking after a new life too. So I'm not sure which of you wants to take that first.
No, thank you. I'll go first. So, we have a code of practice on mothers that are on pregnancy and lactation. And so people might not be aware, but there's actually a legislated way how the workplace should handle that. So sometimes what is critical is that you must have policies that enable the implementing those kind of policies. With young mothers, we have a lot of digital natives in this audience. I think you should be aware of the femtechs, female techs, kind of apps that are now supporting the workplace. We have now technology that we can bring that helps us to firstly, track our fertility, our ovulation. We have apps that can help us track our menopause. Lactation is one of them. We have apps that can also track vaccination of our children. So things are changing, and they're changing to help us to be more engaged than just relying on one source of information. And I'm bringing this because this is really what is going to bridge the gap between the rural women and the women in the urban areas. We tend to focus on urban areas, but the same technology can create social inequality because we are not putting our energies into that. So the workplace becomes a very good place where you can run these programs, train people, and help them to be engaged in their own workplace. But the policies of the workplace are critical as enablers of implementing these programs in the workplace. One of the key ones, especially with young mothers coming back from work, is the lactation. People know me. This really I don't like. When people come back and they're lactating their babies, their breasts are engorged, then we have to put them in a toilet for them to, to relieve their breasts. That is now old. In the new South Africa, it's not acceptable. At least most employers in this room should know that. At least where I normally go, things have changed. We started from a toilet, now we have a proper lactation room, or even in the clinic, we allocate space for mothers to express, and these apps also help us to tell us that the breasts are engorged. So we need to support lactating mothers. Breast milk is still the best. There is nothing better than breast milk. So if we don't give that supportive environment, we are encouraging other things. So it depends, but most organizations are progressive. They've made employee well-being as a key value proposition for their employees. So it's really moving in the direction, and I think the FemTech is just moving us in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is another question for Dr. Mpumelelo, and in fact I'm going to combine two questions because it's clearly an issue that is concerning our audience, and we did promise we'd get into taboos too. And here our audience is asking, women are key to leadership, however we tend not to support each other in terms of pulling others up around us, and of course there's many reasons for it. And we'll bring the other question in here too, where it says that what do we do about women bullying other women? What does that dynamic look like in terms of scarcity, in terms of abundance, and in terms of how we are really in practice looking after that next generation of leaders?
Sure, Bronwyn, that for me is something we had hoped that in this generation would not be an issue, but unfortunately it looks like it's with us. Bullying doesn't just happen in schools, but we definitely see it in corporate. And in practice, I certainly see a lot of individuals that are bullied, not just by women, by the way, that are bullied in the system, they're bullied at work, and that can lead to depressive symptoms and burnout, etc., and a lot of working under pressure and stress. It's very difficult to say what it is that can be done, because we're dealing with a complex system, complex community. I think that it is a corporate issue, so I do think that there should be some consequences and there should be some way for individuals that are being bullied, because there's a mental health piece to it, which is hugely serious. There should be some way in corporate that people are able to whistleblow very safely. We should create what we refer to as psychological safety in our environments. The education should actually be happening at an organizational level. It should be happening in a corporate level, so these individuals that are being bullied at work, whether it's by women or anybody else at work, can go very safely, report it, and importantly that there be some consequences, because sometimes we know in corporate and in a work setting, lots of people will then complain about certain things, but nothing is done. And what then happens is that people stop talking about it and people suffer alone. In terms of women pulling each other down, again, something that in my generation, it's quite sad for us to look forward and see that this is still happening now. And we can only encourage that people feel secure in themselves, because somebody who's secure in themselves would not participate in this pulling down. We want to make sure that everybody reaches a level of success that they can in terms of their own potential. This pulling down as far as we're concerned, happens when an individual feels that they have not reached the potential that they should have, and therefore there will be levels of jealousy, there will be elements where, you know, this individual does not look like somebody that should be in this room with me. There's room for absolutely everybody. There is room for absolutely everybody. If one needs to do the work in order to embrace others in a community, and especially women, I think let's do that work. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Malapule, I'm going to put a question to you that is, again, perhaps not super fair to ask you, but I think it's important that we cover this topic too. And there's the reality of how healthcare has a cost, doesn't it? It's expensive. And how can we, as a society, as individuals, as organizations, and even as healthcare practitioners, help to make healthcare more inclusive for more women? We've heard about the importance of looking after yourself, giving yourself space, making sure you care about what you eat, but finding the time and the resources to invest in our physical well-being, to see professionals like yourselves. What advice or what do you think needs to change in society so we can make healthcare more equitable to more women?
I wish I had a magic answer to that, but just acknowledging it is a fair point to start with. I'm more in the field of focusing about how the process of aging and perimenopause and menopause, unfortunately, is more neglected in the less advantaged women.
Yes.
Maybe foundations like the Motsepe Foundation can play a huge role in closing that gap, because what happens is that women, as they transition from the reproductive age and hormones change, they're over 40, the ovaries are starting to decline in their function, women start feeling different. And they start having less coping abilities. They feel different. They have less tolerance. Their mood change. Their energy levels drop. Therefore, the way they interact with their families, the way they interact with their colleagues in their working environment, and how they cope with stressors that they've always had, the stressors now start becoming insurmountable. They feel like not like themselves. Now, the privileged woman goes onto the internet, identifies a specialist like myself. There are not many of us, even in the medical profession, even in gynecology. There's so many subspecialties. There are many doctors and gynecologists who don't have a special interest because you can't be an expert in everything. So it's just unfortunate that then those that have will have access to the best. But it's more of organizations that are set up to alleviate the wellness of women to also just try and engage with government or even themselves, start their own systems of gathering doctors that can just be available for women that are less advantaged.
Very good point. I mean, these are issues that, of course, affect like half of our population. And have we actually adequately thought about the funding and the access to needs as women get older? So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And thank you to all of my panelists. Our time is up. But for all of you too in the audience, a reminder that we're going to take a 10-minute comfort break. So go comfort yourselves, but please do come back because we're going to be talking about AI, something I think everyone is very interested in, changing the topic quite a lot. And of course, as you go have your comfort break, think about what our experts here have said about what you choose to eat at the various snack tables you'll have today and why. And thank you so much for your participation in the chat. If you can't find any of our experts throughout the day, by all means, continue the conversation. But otherwise, thank you so much for your generosity and your wisdom.